Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. Alright, today we are going to be taking a quick look at Darkest, a zombie game that was kickstarted a few years ago. So just a really quick synopsis for those of you who only watched the first few minutes of videos. Darkest is, it could be a good game for you if you are looking for something that is challenging, both in terms of playing and winning the game, and also, unfortunately, in terms of learning the game. There are a lot of rules, and you can pick the game up for next to nothing. I think it's a better game played with a group rather than solo because I really do think it's easier with more characters, and it can create a really harrowing experience. If you're looking for something to really give you that feeling of playing the original Resident Evil 1 or Resident Evil 2, this might be a game for you. Just know that it's going to be a little bit of an uphill battle to get to that point because it can be a difficult game to learn. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the game. The game was kickstarted a few years ago, and I know the developer had some issues. He, I think, kind of felt betrayed and left to his own devices by the publisher, and the game ended up being released in a pretty messy state. The original rulebook, from what I've heard, is just, it's practically impossible to play the game from the original rulebook. So the developer, the creator of the game, he made an updated rulebook, which I have printed out. I have never even looked at the original rulebook because I've heard it is such a mess. So for me, it doesn't even exist. I've heard from multiple people, just go straight to the revised rules. So I am using that. And there are a lot of rules. Let me tell you, this is not an easy game to play, both in terms of just the challenge that it's going to pose to you and your group as players. It's also a challenging game to learn. I am using this to learn how to play. I printed off these rules cheat sheet to learn how to play from BGG. I have the official FAQ printed out, and then also your icon guide that comes with the game. And yeah, there is a lot to keep track of in this game. So just know that going in, if I make the game sound interesting to you, just know that there is going to be some work on your part to get there. But if you are looking for something that is challenging, if you are looking for a zombie game that will give you something more than something like zombies or Zombicide. If you're looking for a zombie game that has difficult choices and some pretty interesting mechanisms, this might really be a game for you. Also know that you can pick this game up for next to nothing. There's a copy right now on March 24th today, I believe it is, for $10 on BGG. So yeah, this is one of those games that you might pick up and you might be really surprised by how much you like it, especially if you've heard a lot of bad things about it. Okay, so what is Darkest? It is really, at its core, it is Resident Evil 1, the board game. And it even has just that same sense of tension. As a matter of fact, I used to love the Resident Evil video games, but I really can't play them anymore because they're so filled with tension. I hate, having to really keep track of my ammunition and my items and just all of that whole problem solving. Those kinds of survival horror games now, they stress me out. I still appreciate them, but I just don't really have a lot of fun playing. So in Darkest, you are playing as a number of survivors of heroes in this mansion with names like Chuck Lee, Bunny Van Camp, Jack Fulci, Leo Friedkin, Lucy Chang. The two characters I have on the table right now are Bruce Romero and Nina Argento. Yeah, The names are a little eye-rolling, I know. But um, so you are playing survivors. You are going into this mansion and you are looking for this antidote to the viral zombie outbreak, okay? And then once you find that antidote, you are going to have to do battle with one of the bosses of this family that owns this mansion or their associates, Lisa Mortimer, Doc Mortimer, Helen Cronin, or Rachel Mortimer. Once you do that, you win the game. Easier said than done. To get into this laboratory to where you have to pick up this antidote and trigger the final confrontation, you have to search throughout the house, opening doors, picking locks, finding items in order to figure out the code that opens up the laboratory. So on this code sheet you have, when you're going to set up the game, you are going to draw a certain number of lock tokens. And those tokens are going to have lock icons on them. To unlock this door, you need to have a combination of items that includes those symbols. So to unlock this door, I would need the combination of items, 2 white and a red. And each of the items that you find during the game by taking a search action, each one is going to have a certain icon that you're looking for. So you would need like maybe the dynamite, the handgun, and handgun bullets. If you had all 3 of those items in your inventory, you could unlock this lock. And then for another action at certain spots on the map, you could take that and you could plug it into your little code breaking mechanism here, and then you could remove those chips, the code chips that match. And then you have to do that 2 more times to remove the rest of the codes. Once all of those are removed, you have figured out the code to the laboratory. You can unlock the laboratory and proceed into the final part of the game. So it is pretty interesting because you're going through the house, you are searching. You know, it's kind of like you're searching for that hex crank that can open up that hex-shaped lock, but it's abstracted a little bit. And when you're setting up the board, you are going to be drawing these at random, looking at what they are, populating your code with the right combination, and then you're going to take a certain number of other locks, mix them up, shuffle them up, and then you're going to put those out on the board face down. And so as your characters, as your survivors are exploring, then you are going to be looking at these locks to determine what you need to get everything out of the house and get that antidote. While you're doing that, the house also has these security camera systems, and they are going to be spying in directions. If they notice you, then certain other enemies, maybe stronger enemies, are going to be spawned out. Not just zombies, but maybe a zombie security guard, maybe a giant snake, or an undead bird, or a gorilla, undead gorilla, or possibly, for Resident Evil fans, your zombie dog. Now these creatures are pretty interesting because they have different hit locations. And as your survivors, as they apply damage to the different locations, it's going to affect, blue will affect their movement. You might be able to affect them from being able to bite you and certain things. So it is pretty cool that the more powerful enemies have hit locations that once damage actually do something. Another thing you're going to have to be worrying about while trying to find your right items to unlock the doors, to find the code, to unlock that laboratory and get that antidote is the house itself, because fire is going to be breaking out and spreading. So you're going to have a fire token. This fire token is going to be spreading. It's going to be causing rooms to catch on fire, and it's going to be moving around the house. spreading its fire. Whenever a room gets 3 or more fire, or 3 fire tokens, then that room gets destroyed and it becomes like a permanent fire fixture that you have to deal with. So you have to deal with fire in this game. As you're fighting zombies, zombies are going to be spawning every turn. Some turns they will spawn twice. Sometimes they will kind of call for reinforcements, or reinforcements will arrive as they have found somebody to eat. As you can see up here, I have a huge horde of 8 zombies here. Very, very dangerous room. But the zombies are going to be attacking you, and the different enemies are going to be attacking you. And every time they attack you, something terrible happens. Basically, the enemies can never miss when they attack you. Probably the worst thing that they can do is they can bite you, and you can get infected with the virus and get too many of these, and you will die by becoming a zombie. Some of these zombies will entrap you. They will, zombies will circle you and grab at your clothes, and then you can't move. And so there are all kinds of things that you have to keep track of, all kinds of different dangers. There's threat management, there is combat, there is item searching, unlocking, code breaking. There's all kinds of stuff that you have to keep track of, and all kinds of dangers in this game. This is my second game, and I still am very, very shaky on the rules. There is a lot going on in this game. I personally find it a little too difficult. I lost my first game pretty quickly, and I'm probably not going to win this one either. It's a challenging game, and part of that challenge is knowing when you need to push your survivors to take damage, when you need to avoid that. Part of it is just knowing when you need to push yourself. Kind of like sleeping gods. People who are having trouble with sleeping gods, they're having trouble because they don't like their characters to be damaged, to have wounds. But wounds in that game are kind of like a resource that you have to manage. And that's kind of how it is here too. You do need to, your survivors are going to be taking damage. I have a feeling that if you ever do win the game, it's going to be by like the skin of your teeth. It's one of those games where you need to know when you need to take that really dangerous action, put yourself in danger, take the bruises, take the scrapes, and come out on top, hopefully. So the way the game is played is it's pretty interesting. This dashboard here keeps track of everything that you need to do during basically the game, the turn. And it's all numbered. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to move this token down this one spot on each turn. Okay, so at this spot here, you're going to spawn a zombie. On this spot here, if there's fire on the board, then that fire spreads. On this spot here, your timer is going to tick down. If the timer ever reaches this fire spot here and there is no fire on the board, you're going to spawn a fire. The way you spawn enemies and fire in this game is pretty cool. So you have rows and columns. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns and 4 rows. So you roll a d4 and a d6. Let's say you were spawning a group of zombies. Let's say you were spawning 2 zombies. You would go to column 3 and row 3. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So you would spawn zombies there. It's the same way that you spawn fire. If you ever get to this last number here on turn 5 and you have not yet triggered the end game, that is game over. It's the timer in this game is kind of simulating that the house is fighting back against you, and you will quickly get overrun. This is kind of a rush game, but it makes sense thematically. And so then after you have dealt with one of these, you're going to go to number 2, and that's called like a regrouping phase, where your survivors, based on where they are, based if they are separated or together, they're going to form different groups of survivors. You know, if I had my two survivors grouped together there, they would be considered one group, and I would put them in the same little grouping area. If they were in different rooms, then they would be in two separate groups. And the survivors, they take their turn according to where they are positioned on this track. And then they're going to take a number of actions. With playing with two, you start with 4 actions. And with those actions, you can move, you can search, you can unlock doors, you can fight, you can do your standard kind of dungeon crawly things with those actions. Then you're also going to, at step 3, you're going to check your cameras to see if any of your cameras are going to have any of their, if they have line of sight to any of your heroes or your survivors. If they do have line of sight, then you're going to have to roll some dice, and some creatures might spawn based on the results. Then you're going to spawn some zombies, and then also you are going to have to check to see if zombification happens. So that's kind of how the game progresses. After you've done all 5 of those things, after you've regrouped, after you've checked your camera, after you have checked for spawning and all that kind of stuff, then the heroes, the survivors, are going to take their turn. And then the enemies on the board are going to react to your survivors. And usually what's going to happen is a whole bunch of zombies are going to spawn. They are going to slowly close in on you. You are going to have to blast them with your shotgun or your automatic submachine guns, hopefully clearing a path, hopefully being able to dodge out of the room so you can continue looking for those items you need to open those doors that you need to open to get those lock icons, and then hopefully you can put together the right code to open up that laboratory. So there is a lot going on in this game. I personally find it a little bit too much. I'd say this game is on the complex side of things, especially for this kind of thematic, combat adventure style game. It's also just a little bit frustrating in terms of just learning the game, because it did have some problems. You do need to check a lot of things. There are a lot of icons that maybe aren't as intuitive as they could be. There are a lot of icons that you just have to look up to see what they do. And there are just a lot of little fiddly things that you have to do. Luckily, this dashboard here does help you keep things in check. And then once you trigger the end game, there's a whole nother dashboard that also will help you keep track of the end game. I've actually never seen this because I've never made it to the end game, and I don't know if I ever will. One thing that is frustrating is when you are searching for those items, you are at the mercy of the item deck. And, I was playing in my first game, I didn't find, in the first 10 or 15 cards, I didn't find any of the colors I needed. I didn't find any of the items I needed to unlock anything. So there is a way that if you don't have all of the colors that you need, let's say you only had a purple item and you needed this yellow item, you just weren't finding it. You could force the lock, but for every color that you don't have, you have to move that timer down 1. So that's another decision that you have to make. Eventually, you're going to have to say, hey, we need to force this. We need to push that timer because we need to open up that lock in order to get the code to open up the laboratory. But I was not having any luck in finding any of the colors I needed to open the doors. And that was super frustrating. And all that came down to was how I shuffled the deck before I started the game. So that can be frustrating. A lot of zombies can spawn. I had 2 4s in a row spawn, and that was those up there. So there was 8 zombies in that room, and they're going to move as a horde as they start moving towards me. There are also 5s and 6s, which I can't even imagine. There's some 2s and 1s. Yeah, there's a 5. So a lot of zombies can come up on the board, and it can very quickly get overwhelming. I have a feeling that playing this game with just 2 survivors is too difficult. I'm not going to say it's unwinnable with 2. I'm not a great game player. I'm not a great strategist or a tactical thinker. So it is entirely possible that you could win this game with only 2 survivors. I have a feeling that this game, if you want to get it, is probably a lot more fun with 4 survivors and playing with 4 people. I think this is a game that a group would really like, especially if your group is into Resident Evil, if they are into games that are more challenging, a little on the heavier side of the thematic game rule sets. And if you're looking for something that maybe you've never thought of because you've heard bad things about it, like I said, you can pick this game up for like next to nothing. And I think for the right group of people, the right type of game players, this could be a pretty good game. If you get the Kickstarter version, it comes with all kinds of other things, new zombies, new kinds of tokens, some more items, a new win condition where you have to get to a helicopter. It comes with different kinds of zombies that are going to be, your groups might be like faster or stronger. Basically, all of the things that the Kickstarter comes with are things to make the game harder. So I am actively avoiding all of those. But I don't think this game is for me. I personally find it a little bit too difficult. I find the rules to be a little bit more complex than I like, especially when playing a game solo. But I do appreciate some of the things that this game is trying to do. It's using resource management. It's using some spatial elements on the board. It's using dice in interesting ways. I didn't even mention the whole thing that when you set up your house, I mean, all of these are individual rooms, and there's a whole nother stack of rooms that I have. So the way you set up the board can change things drastically. I have it set up now for an easier time. There's a couple examples of an easy house and a hard house. You could just do it completely at random. Be warned though, you could set up the house in such a way that you cannot win the game. So that's another kind of weird thing. It is possible to mess up when you're setting up the game to make it an unwinnable scenario. So just know that going in as well. But yeah, if you're looking for something a little off the beaten path, something that you're going to have to work at to get to the fun, and you want to play a really challenging game that will you'll probably feel really good about if you finally win the game, you might want to look at Dark Darker Darkest. If you're looking for, personally, I would personally be looking for something in a zombie game that is like somewhere in between this at one end and Zombicide at another end. That game kind of like right there in the middle. That's kind of my sweet spot. And for me, I think that is probably Order of Vampire Hunters, which is another flawed game, but one that I kind of like. But yeah, so I just wanted to do a quick look at this. This game was voted on by the Dungeon Dive patrons as the next game I was going to take a look at after Shadows of Brimstone. So, all right, guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed this look at Dark Darker Darkest. And we will talk to you later. Bye-bye.